Қарқынды дамуда. Технологиялық ілгерілеу үшін металдар мен электр энергиясының түрлі көздері қажет. ERG әлемді осындай ресурстармен қамтамасыз етеді. ERG кәсіпорындары әлемнің 15 елінде жұмыс істейді. Қуаты кәсіпорындардың дені Қазақстанда шоғырланған. Компанияның соңғы 5 жылда елдің жалпы ішкі өнімге қосқан үлесі 5 триллион теңге. Қазақстандағы жоғары маркалы бастапқы алюминий және глинозем өндіретін алғашқы және жалғыз кәсіпорын ERG құрамында. Электр энергиясының 17%-ын ERG-дің электр энергетикалық активтері өндіріп тұр. Шетелге өнім өткізудің негізгі нарықтары Европа елдері, Қытай, Ресей, Жапония. Осы жетістіктердің барлығы біздің қызметкерлеріміздің еңселі еңбегінің жемісі. Компанияның басты құндылығы адам. ERG жердің және адамзаттың әлеуетін ұқыпты пайдалана отырып, өзіне сенім артқандардың өркендеуін қамтамасыз етіп келеді.
We know it's going to take many forms of energy to meet the world's needs while creating a cleaner future for all. At Chevron, we're lowering the carbon emissions intensity of our operations, investing in lower carbon technologies, and exploring renewable fuels of the future. We work hard to care for the homes we love, but it's only human to protect the one we share.
Это что такое? Да не игра. Вот это. Возможно, вы думаете, что виза — это просто банковские карты. А что, если я скажу, что название, которое вы видите повсюду, это больше, чем просто надпись? Виза — это сеть. Она помогает людям переводить деньги отсюда вот сюда. И помогает этому парню работать онлайн, чтобы он мог продать джинсы, находясь да хоть бы на этой горе. Это волшебство, которое остается за кадром, но может объединить всех со всеми. Эта сеть позволяет взглянуть на мир свежим взглядом за утренней чашкой кофе и меняет точку зрения на то, что делает бизнес бизнесом. Виза — это сеть, которая может объединить всех. Там, где вам нужно быть. Там, куда вы мечтаете попасть. Там, где вы заслуживаете быть. Эта сеть — ключ к исполнению мечты. Ведь виза каждый день открывает двери по всему миру, чтобы коммерция объединяла нас всех. Виза — сеть, которая работает для каждого.
Бұл не екен? Ойын емес, мынау. Бәлкім сіз визаны жай ғана банк карталар деп ойлайтын боларсыз. Егер мен сіздің әр жерде көріп жүрген атауыңыз жай ғана атаудан әлде қайда зор нәрсе екенін айтсам, не дер едіңіз? Виза дегеніміз желі. Ол адамдарға ақшаны ана жерден мына жерге аударуға көмектеседі. Және де мына жігітке тіпті таудың басына шығып алса да онлайн жұмыс істеп джинсаны сатуға көмектеседі. Бұл кадр сыртында қалатын, бірақ бәрін бір-бірімен байланыстыра алатын ғажайып. Ол таңғы кофе ішкенде әлемге жаңа көзбен қарауға мүмкіндік беріп, бизнесті бизнес ететін нәрселерге көз қарасты өзгерте алады. Виза бәрін біріктіре алатын желі. Сізге қажет жерде, сіздің арманыңыздағы жерде, сізге лайық жерде. Бұл желі арманды іске асырудың кілті. Өйткені виза күн сайын бүкіл әлем бойынша есік ашады. Коммерция бәрімізді біріктірсін деген оймен.
Greetings to our audience joining us online as well as offline at Astana Finance Days in Nur Sultan, as well as those who will be watching us and this live stream recording later on. I would like to turn it over first to Elmira Obry from the Center for Continuing Professional Development at AIFC, and thank you for hosting an excellent forum, as well as one of the major education technology events in Kazakhstan. Elmira.
Thank you, and welcome to the Tech Forum. Good evening, actually, for the USA participants, dear guests. Good morning. It's a great honor to welcome you here for the 4th annual Tech Forum. The theme of this year is Meta. It's mobility, entertainment, technology, and actions. Technologies are changing significantly a lot of industries, but the role of the human has not gone away. It's changed definitely. So that's why it's important to understand what would be our next steps in education technologies development. How will our markets proceed with all the challenges and initiatives which are happening all around the metaverse, technologies progress, and fourth industrial revolution. I'll be so thankful for you to share the great trends which are happening in USA and worldwide with our local community, because what we are doing actually, we are combining the international experience with a local wisdom. And for us, the sustainability, resilience, and professional exchange is very important. Thank you once again for participating this session. I wish us the great at Tech Forum Meta. And yeah, I'll pass the floor to Aliya, our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elmira, for those welcome remarks. And we hope that the audience in Kazakhstan would benefit from this event. And we're very pleased to host a panel focusing on US education technology and have excellent panelists lined up for the audience today. It will be focused on US best practices on the technology solutions, as well as policies and frameworks on implementation of those solutions. And we'll hear from some of the emerging technology companies in the United States as well. Quick logistical items for our audience. You would be able to ask questions to our esteemed panelists at the end of the this main panel discussion, and Mireille Lucero, our partner for the event and the host of this panel, will read out your questions. If time is limited, we would be happy to reach out to our panelists on your behalf and make sure that your questions are answered. Once again, we hope that you will be able to gain some perspectives and new insights from our panelists today. And to start, I would like to turn over the floor to my colleague from the US Department of Commerce. The US Department of Commerce works with hundreds of US education technology companies that are ready to start exporting their solutions around the world and are looking for partners across all sectors. And so I'd like to give the floor first to my colleague Rachel Alarid from the Office of Industry and Analysis at the US Department of Commerce to talk about the US education technology sector overall with trends and statistics. And Rachel, thank you so much for replacing our colleague Ruth today, who unfortunately got COVID. Rachel, over to you, and the floor is yours. What are some of the current trends and clusters and drivers of the sector, and where are the ed tech companies in the United States?
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Rachel Alarid, and I'm an international trade specialist with the Office of Supply Chain Professional Business Services, where I cover the EdTech, education, and R&D portfolios. I do apologize, I have a dog and he's running up the stairs right now in front of me. Today I will be talking about the US EdTech industry, and most importantly, what is driving the EdTech industry here in the United States. In 2020, a report authored by UK-based RS Components determined that the United States edtech market is the world's largest edtech market. The continued disruption in the delivery of in-person education services between 2020 and 2021 proved to be lucrative for the edtech sector here in the United States. On January 28, 2022, Tony Wan reported in Medium.com that the US technology companies raised collectively $8.2 billion of investment capital in 2021. That is nearly 4 times the $2.2 billion that was raised in 2020.
Rachel, I'm so sorry for interrupting. Would you mind sharing the slides share view? We can see
I am sharing.
The full screen, or
let's see.
No, we can see your screen and we can see your notes as well as.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. It's F5, or there's a button.
F5? Bear with me for just a moment. I'm so sorry. Okay. Bear with me. I do apologize for any inconvenience. The U.S. Department of Commerce, Bureau of Economic Analysis, the U.S. Department of Commerce, Bureau of Economic Analysis does not track trade in edtech. However, we do have a bit of a window into edtech services trade. In 2020, the Bureau of Economic Analysis started reporting on the exports of educational services, which is defined as online and digital correspondence classes. Over the past decade, U.S. exports of educational services have more than doubled. These trends have persisted despite the impacts of COVID-19. In 2019, the latest data available, the United States exported about $2.3 billion in educational services, a 16.4% increase from the previous year. During that same period, imports of educational services have also exhibited significant growth. In 2020, the U.S. imported $1.9 billion in educational services, a 16% increase from 2019. As I previously said, the U.S. edtech industry is massive. The University of Virginia's EdTech Evidence Exchange estimates that prior to the pandemic, the U.S. K-12 schools spent between $26 billion and $41 billion annually on educational technology. Given the impact the pandemic has had on the U.S. K-12 system, it is estimated that spending on educational technology during the 2020-21 academic year could possibly exceed $50 billion. Silicon Valley, San Francisco, New York City, Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, and Boston are the prominent edtech hubs here in the United States. However, there are other edtech hubs that are also revolutionizing education here in the United States. In North Carolina, the cities of Durham, Chapel Hill, and Raleigh, otherwise known as the Research Triangle, are home to several major players in the edtech sector, including Do to Learn, Learn Platform, Member Hub, and Smart Game Systems. And in Pennsylvania, the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine has invested in creating its own laboratory for educational technology with the goal of assisting the local community in effective use of information technology and education. Thank you. And as was previously said, if you have any additional questions, I will be happy to answer those at the end of the panel presentation. Thank you.
Rachel, thank you so much for giving us a quick overview of where the trends are and where the main clusters are. And again, thank you so much for stepping in on behalf of our colleague, Ruth. Secure and equitable infrastructure is very important for any technology, but it's especially significant and sensitive in education. I would like to invite Jody Lawrence from the U.S. Department of Education, the Office of Education Technology, to share her insights and policy best practices from the U.S. Department of Education. Jody, thank you so much for being with us here today. What are some exciting trends as well as concerns and challenges you see in your work? And what regulations does the Department of Education adhere to in order to ensure equitable and secure access to digital learning environments?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Before I begin, can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Give me a thumbs up. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. I'm going to move my little, there we go. Okay. Well, as introduced, I am Jody Lawrence. I'm here today to talk about the work that my office does within the United States Department of Education and some of the priorities that we have within the office. So I just want to start by thanking everyone for your attendance and your interest in this topic. Very quickly, this is the OET team, so I'm just one representative for the team. We are led by our Deputy Director, Christina Ishmael. We have 3 career staff, Bernadette, Kevin, and Sarah in that order. And then I am one of 4 fellows in the office. Technology has become a core component for nearly every process in educational settings. And it opens the doors to numerous academic and whole child supports. There is a critical need to ensure that our digital infrastructure functions to promote student safety, privacy, security, accessibility, and support system level change. So our office is charged with following current and emerging trends related to all things ed tech and all things digital. We work with people in the agency to understand that the gold standard of evidence looks different with ed tech because it changes so frequently. And our office is always working to better understand what is happening within the field. This is our mission statement. I'm not going to read it, but I will say that we carry out our mission in a few different ways. So we focus on promoting equity of access to transformational learning. We support personalized professional learning for the state, the district, and the school leaders and the educators. And we ensure that all learners are connected to broadband internet. That is one of the main priorities that we have around digital inclusion. I'll get to that in a minute. So OET, the Office of Educational Technology, is situated within OPEPD, which is the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Planning, Evaluation, and Policy Development. It's a lot of acronyms. But we received a charge from Congress through the Goals 2000 Educate America Act to set the national vision for effective technology use through the regular development of a National Ed Tech Plan, or abbreviated the NETP. The latest iteration of this was in 2017. And it did set a national vision on policy, both addressing the digital divide and the digital use divide. And everything that I have is linked. So if there's anything that you would like, any links that you would like to look at or read more about at the end, I'm happy to provide those. All right, so how do we operationalize this mission, right? So we do this in 3 ways. Through practical guidance and policies, through strategic investments, and engagement and collective action. So we support practical policies that align and drive forward the mission of the office, and strategic investments, innovative ideas, catalyzing research, and pushing for schools to advance the knowledge of the community, and supporting educators as they adopt these practices into their own pedagogy. Quickly, I just wanted to review some of the laws that we interact with a lot. These are laws, a few federal laws that govern issues related to ed tech, like I said, these are the main laws that our office interacts with. These laws have implications for how ed tech platforms can collect, share, and maintain student data and personal identifying information. And again, there are direct texts I can provide at any point in time. You can email me, whatever. So the three main laws that have important implications are the FERPA, which is all around students' right to privacy, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which protects children, especially under the age of 13. And the IDEA Act, which covers and protects individuals with disabilities and makes sure that they have equal access and are thought about when we're developing and supporting innovative ed tech tools. So I'm going to introduce this priority of digital equity. This is sort of our umbrella term, right? So digital equity is defined, or it means the condition to which individuals and communities have the information technology capacity that is needed for full participation in society and the economy of the United States. So as we know, there's been a national refocus on the importance of technology, especially over the last 2 years. And we need to make sure that all students can take advantage of the recent and the upcoming investments in technology, especially those that have been marginalized due to the impact of the pandemic. So a gap that became very apparent during the pandemic was the access to internet from home. One estimate from earlier in 2021 found that approximately 15 to 16 million K-12 students were impacted by broadband access. So we have a couple briefs recommending strategies for states and districts to close that digital divide. We have the Home Access Playbook, which outlines comprehensive strategies like better data collection, collaboration with states, community partners, trainings, etc. And we have the Wireless Brief, which presents strategies for deploying off-campus wireless networks as a sustainable solution. Included in digital equity is the idea of digital inclusion. And that means activities that are necessary to ensuring that all individuals in the United States have access to affordable information and communication technologies, such as reliable fixed and wireless broadband internet, internet-able devices that meet the needs of the user, and application content that is designed to enable and encourage self-sufficiency, participation, collaboration, etc., right? The bipartisan infrastructure law prioritizes and defines digital inclusion. And so within inclusion, we have 3 different priority branches or strategies. And just to preface, these are in draft. So everything that we're saying is in draft right now. These are not finalized priorities. The first is inclusion with connectivity and devices. The second being instructional models and content. And the third being digital literacy. I specifically work on digital literacy, so I can talk a lot about what digital literacy sort of means or the projects that we have going on in the office, but I'll sum it up for time. We know that we need to be emphasizing a digital literate and digital citizenship-esque society, right? It is incredibly important for people, especially as we are using technology so much today. We have seen how the lack of digital literacy skills can contribute to misinformation within our country. I work on the Digital Literacy Accelerator, which focuses on early promising innovations in EdTech that combat mis and disinformation and help the users develop their skill set in digital literacy. So that's just one of the projects that we have in the office that I am especially involved in. Another major priority in the office is around ecosystem. So I don't need to go into this too much. We focus a lot on digital infrastructure and what that looks like, the term interoperability, so how technologies are talking to each other, how that information is being processed, and how many different apps or technologies that someone has to learn to use in order to get their information kind of streamlined. We focus on educators and making sure they have professional learning opportunities, and families and communities are, of course, always one of the ecosystems that we prioritize. The last big emerging trend or priority is around emerging trends and technologies. So we aim to work towards supporting trends and technologies that support innovation and equity. As previously mentioned, OET has developed the NETP, the National EdTech Plan, and establishes the vision for how technology can be used to transform teaching and learning. We advocate for rapid cycle evaluation as a form of evidence-based practice in EdTech. This is sort of a new and emerging field, but technology is moving so quickly that rapid cycle evaluation is one of the more promising ways that we can gather evidence. And so we focus on that when we think about vision and responsible use and design, and catalyzing promising research. The last thing that I just want to mention, just because this is a wide audience, there are several things that our office does to engage with the community, and one of our priorities is around amplifying best practices, catalyzing research, innovation, right? The first thing that we do is we have an OET blog. We do a lot of different things with this blog. We have strategies to navigate different learning scenarios. We focus on teacher highlights and teacher capacity, and the role of EdTech coaches. We have blogs that highlight work that aligns with priorities externally, internally, to amplify and showcase what's working and maybe what's not, and the thoughts and the evidence behind that. So the blog is a great way to kind of stay up to date on projects and priorities that we are currently looking at. We also do Twitter chats where we engage the public. We ask a question. I'm not really a Twitter person, but we ask a question and the public can respond and engage with our other followers. We attend conferences, convenings, and events, just like this one, where we sort of talk about the work that we're doing and how people can get involved. And we collaborate at the state and the local level quite a bit. We engage with state tech leaders all the time. The last slide that I have is just around some resources for people getting involved in developing EdTech tools. Another thing I do in the office a lot is meet with people who are developers, who have innovations. They want to show us, we want to know the field. We want to know what's happening. So these are all resources on the website. But what I will say is, the last thing I'll say is, from an OET perspective, there needs to be more intentionality around the EdTech ecosystem. Of the 6,700 EdTech tools in the US market, a K through 12 district on average uses roughly 1,500 maybe EdTech tools. So for the most part, each one has their own system. They don't necessarily talk. This revolves back to my idea of interoperability, right? So we need to discuss the nuts and bolts of EdTech as an ecosystem that is interoperable, safe with student data privacy, secure against potential threats, and accessible to every learner. So these are all resources for anybody interested. That's the link at the bottom. And I just wanted to thank you for your attention. That's my email address. That's our Twitter handle. Like I said, we do those Twitter chats. Yeah, and all the information that you would need for anything is linked. So happy to share and happy to engage anytime.
Thank you so much, Jody, for providing such an excellent and extensive overview of the operations of the Office of Education Technology at the U.S. Department of Education, and sharing these important policies and highlighting the projects that you're working on. Turning over to some of the technology solutions that you mentioned, Jody. Emerging technologies are already here, and augmented and virtual reality are mesmerizing us in entertainment and edutainment. Today we have with us Dr. Rainer Walsinger, Chief Learning Officer at Ion Reality Incorporated, that works on VR and AR solutions in education across various industry sectors. Rainer, thank you so much for being with us today. Could you explain how these solutions are used in the education sector in the United States, and how exactly is augmented and virtual reality benefiting learners in practice? Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, and it's an honor to be here. My name is Dr. Rainer Walsinger. I've been working in digital technologies for over 20 years as a digital media professor. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Ion Reality, which you mentioned, and I'm going to be sharing some slides just to demonstrate what this looks like. So let me go ahead and set that up so you should all be seeing the slide right now. One of the main things in digital technologies, and I heard several of you mention this already, is knowledge is a human right. We all have the right to access knowledge. Internet is critical, and security as well, and education as well as workforce training is very critical. So platforms such as AWS are very important to us. Internet speed and mobile phones are critical to have access for kind of newer technology. So I work in over 100 countries currently with Eon Reality, and we've been there in that space for about 24 years. And this is the one thing that we see as the more access to the internet and mobile technologies, the more students are able to learn with these new tools that are in the marketplace. So some of the learning goals, my main job is to work on pedagogy with everybody, and what we have is a SaaS platform now that so everybody can access this on a mobile phone. In fact, there's a free version that everybody can go to. And the marketplace has changed so fast, as you mentioned. In the last 6 months, there's been over 5 million 3D models placed in the marketplace, most of them free. Content is being created at a very fast pace, which is great for teachers and students. So I'm going to go just over a quick demonstration of what that looks like and how it changes learning, especially online, but just learning about technology and interacting with models where you are. This is so important in equity because you can learn about technologies like being in a hospital while you're on an island, for example. And we work with a lot of countries that maybe they're learning something dangerous like oil and gas platforms, or maybe they're working in something that would be very expensive like a flight simulator. So I'll go over these in a demonstration that I'll just talk through. See if I could play this. Here we go. So one of the things we learned, I think the most important lesson in these last 20 years is this has to be easy for educators.
Classroom.
So what we have now is something called the Eon XR Metaverse Builder. And all you do is with a mobile device, you say the name of the model you want, and then it comes in. We partner with a company called Sketchfab, which has the 5 million models, most of them free. And so here we just said the word classroom. We picked one of the pictures and it comes in and you're in augmented reality on your phone. This was done a couple days ago in Portugal where we're holding a worldwide event. So then you could just build this world. So you say dinosaur and then it can be there. So you can just build your world very quickly and, without pressing buttons or reading instructions, but to create this world of learning. And I think that's the biggest thing for our faculty and students is just the ability to do this easily.
Installation set.
So now this is the third asset being added. Again, you see a picture and you just put it there wherever you want and it comes in. So this gives you the ability to do one thing. At first is build. The second thing is adding knowledge. This is what we're here for. So you can see here there's choices of text, videos, images, PDFs, and audios. All of those types of things that you would normally teach. Like when I teach, I use a technology called Canvas, but an LMS system, learning management system. You would normally have lectures, videos, content, but we want to have it all in the same environment as the interactive content. So now we just move it over here and you can host all of that content within the 3D environment. So the student can experience the environment, interact with it, build all the content here. So it's very quick and easy. It takes virtually, you can see seconds to do this. So here's another, it's a lathe, animated lathe, and you can learn about it. You can label all the parts. You can understand, and you can you can learn all about it, put your own lectures in there as far as student reflection. Now, while you're seeing this, one of the big things that we've discovered also is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So within this, everything is closed caption for hearing and visually impaired, or if you're physically impaired, you can move everything with your fingers. And this is what most of my publications are on, is DEI and education, especially in transfer institutions, which would be early college and university studies. So all of these things, you can say the name, and you can explain.
Human skeleton.
So this is just from the teacher, just explaining what this is. You can do a 3D recording.
This total decreases to around 206.
They're seeing brand new technology here.
The
This
bone mass
is-
of the skeleton is made up of about 14%.
This technology
of body
is
weight,
motion capture
and it is made up
live.
of several different
It's
types of
super
bones.
exciting.
We have short bone, we have long bone, we have flat bone, and irregular bone.
So in that modality, the brand new technology is there's another technology about motion capture from your phone camera or from your camera on your computer, and it live captures what you're doing, and even your face movement. So that helps visually impaired people. It's also more interactive to students.
Okay, in this short procedure, please follow the following steps.
You can also do assessments
Step one,
in the same
remove the
space.
spinal column.
So you take apart and put together models, or repeat steps or
Step
orders
two,
of operation, and then grade
remove
those
the
things.
clavicle bone. Step 3, remove the rib cage. And now we're going
So
to
we have a little bit.
place it back into its original part. And lastly, place the clavicle bone.
So this way, an instructor can go through procedures or order of operations, and then you can see how you're doing there in the assessment. So again, not having to leave the environment, but compatible with the existing environments. In EdTech, I can say one of the things is to be compatible with each other so that we're working together, because we are building at a very fast speed.
Stationary cutting tool has weighs 18 teeth, each up to 20 centimeters or 8 inches long. Its bite was about. Here we are at the pigment.
I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. And one of the things I like about this is I spent a lot of time in aviation.
Classroom.
And let's see, it didn't flip to the next slide. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. So in this slide, I brought in content. We have a lot of content from Boeing and Airbus. And again, in Sketchfab, they're free for everybody to use. And you kind of bring them into the environment, just kind of like a PDF. It's like a zip file. And now here I've added content and videos about all of the different equipment in a 777 cockpit. Here's another quick example of how the knowledge portals look. So you can easily access PDFs, videos, images, whatever about your object. Quick example about scale. So this is a circuit board and how you can take it apart, put it together, learn about individual parts. And then another quick example on an animated model and how beautiful they are. And again, you just twirl around with your finger on your phone and examine those models and experience that. So very different from a book. And lastly, I have an example on digital twins and manufacturing, especially in city planning. Digital twins have become a critical part of quality control. So you can scan any object with LiDAR on your phone or a tablet, and you can create a digital twin of anything from, this is the space shuttle digital twin. Some cities have mapped their entire cities, so that now you can put sensors on these areas and then analyze those and create information. So while you're sitting in your office and creating information, the model is scanned over the real thing. And here's a quick animation showing a study of an engine. You can see all the labels. And again, the knowledge portals there for the students. So a lot of technology here. You're seeing augmented reality and in virtual reality, the metaverse builder, and finally environments, because environments is where we're comfortable teaching, whether you're in a lab or a hospital, for example, and teaching in those. This is you can see outside of my phone there is a park. So I'm just actually learning in a park about electricity. And finally, just to end this up, I have some teacher examples learning about a brain. They label them, do all of the information on each part. They're all closed captioned, and so they can teach the students about all the parts, and then all the content comes up that they want them to experience. So again, not leaving the platform. So the technology AR, XR, VR is a tier. It's growing fast. We now have live motion capture. So this is now going to be, I think, the first time it's going to be that easy for instructors to just hop on, say what they want to add in an environment, and then students bring that in and experience. Again, super important concepts: internet, security, the way that devices are available to people, and the content should be, like you can see all this content coming in that is mostly free from partners. So with that, I will stop sharing.
Rana, thank you so much for this virtual trip into the metaverse and AR and VR world. This is exciting and thrilling, and the future is truly here. Really appreciate the early insight into what EON Reality does in tapping into the metaverse as well, which is one of the topics of this education technology forum. So thank you so much for that presentation and responding to the question. Another emerging technology solution is artificial intelligence, and it is already part of our daily lives sometimes, or most times invisibly. So joining our panel today is Paul Edelblatt, Vice President of Vantage Labs, a company that works in natural language processing and AI for a while now. Thank you for being with us today, Paul. Could you share with us how educators in the United States are taking advantage of AI solutions and on a daily basis, and how effective AI is in education? Paul, I think you're muted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time and attention today, and thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit with you. Just a little bit of background and to contextualize this. So Vantage Labs is a company that may surprise many of you in our depth and breadth of technology. Most of you in the audience have used our technology in the last 24 hours. Our software touches about 2.2 billion customers a day because we deliver the grammar and spell check in Microsoft Office. And if you're not a Microsoft user and you have an Apple product, look under the general about legal section and you'll see 14 of our natural language understanding technologies that power Siri in the iOS. So we come at this from the perspective that language, we come at our AI approach is really about language and the application of technology around language in education. And we do that primarily, we started off 20 years ago scoring essays for instructors and for high stakes tests. We're now scoring in excess of 100 million essays. And as all automation programs should be, we do it slightly better than humans. We do it significantly faster than humans. And then over the 20 years we've been doing this, we add in a couple additional features to this process. The pandemic certainly put an exclamation point on the need for written communication. As we were all stuck in our homes, we were forced to communicate much more often by email than being able to go to meetings and speak with counterparts and colleagues around the world. And so what we've done with the AI and the automated scoring and automated feedback component is we're really opening up this opportunity for adaptive learning. Because we're able to give immediate personalized feedback. And we do that by taking an input, the student's sample of writing or perhaps a job candidate sample of writing. We can immediately score that, and the engine's able to provide not just a score, but multiple scores and then feedback to that individual that's customized to the very specific needs that they may have. And when you think about the engine, it's not scoring just merely on grammar, mechanics, things like that are very rule-based, but it's literally trained based on the inputs of the local community. So in the Kazakhstan context, we would train the engine to score essays the way that your local instructors would, so that we're then really reproducing what you've done, but we're doing it at scale, and we're doing it significantly faster. We bring a bit of quality to that as well, because humans are notoriously bad at rote tasks, and the machine is able to do those tasks, again, better, faster, and generally at a lower cost. And so where we see this play out in terms of benefits to the students is that we've noticed after a study we did of 7,000 students across the United States coming from 40 different states, we saw a 16% jump in student scores when we were giving them automated feedback. And a 16% jump, for those of you who aren't sort of in the trenches of education, is a dramatic change in a student's performance. The outcomes were beyond our wildest expectations. And so what AI is doing, it's thinking like a human, and it's allowing your brain to get feedback in a way that best fits your the actual organic processes that are going on. So as you write, your brain lights up more pathways than any other task that we ask a human to do, because the brain has to have the prefrontal cortex for the organization. We have long-term memory in the back part of the brain. We have our language centers in a different part of the brain. And so when you're writing, you also have a physical component because your fingers are moving. You're either writing with a pen or you're typing on a keyboard. And the AI, because it's able to give that instantaneous feedback, gives it at a moment where all of those pathways are still lit up in the brain. And that instantaneous feedback at the moment while the pathways are built lends itself to storing that in your long-term memory. Whereas when we give the traditional model, a student writes a paper and we give that back to them a day later, 2 days later, 5 days later, all of those pathways have dissolved and they need to be rebuilt again. So this instantaneous feedback and specific to that need of that student in that adaptive environment allows them to internalize that feedback and carry it forward for long-term learning. So we're really applying a biological process on both ends of this system. As you think about AI in your context, I would give just a handful of recommendations as you move forward. The first is trust your students. The students love AI and they love this feedback. It's gamification for them, and they are not afraid of this. At the same time, invest heavily in your educators. The people are still critically important because the best technology in the hands of an educator who does not actually understand how to use it or apply that technology won't be used, and it will be an investment that's lost. Localization is critically important. So as I mentioned, we work with 2.2 billion customers around the world. And it is, when I work, I was on a call earlier this evening with our project in Taiwan. We literally work with the local partners to ensure that that local context is being applied. So when you talk to a US education technology company, don't just take their version as the best thing for your context. Make sure that you get that localized for your needs so that it fits best for you. And finally, keep moving forward. This old model of planning with a sort of a 20-year outlook in the education, or I'm sorry, in the technology world will never fly. You've got to constantly incrementally change and advance your programs as you go.
Thank you so much, Paul. We appreciate your insights about the development of natural language processing and the use of artificial intelligence, as well as the background behind the technology. Thank you also for providing some advice and recommendations in the use of AI. It's all very exciting as well. Now that we covered best practices and policies and have featured some of the emerging solutions, we wanted to discuss some of the frameworks and tools for scaling and implementing education technology solutions. It's an honor to have with us today Professor Chris Deedy, a Timothy E. Wirth Professor in Learning Technologies at Harvard Graduate School of Education. Professor Deedy, Chris, thank you for joining us. You are one of the proponents of embracing the use of emerging technologies in education. And as a practitioner who's on the cutting edge of implementing the new and latest learning technologies throughout your career, I wanted to, first of all, to invite you to provide some general remarks on what you heard today from our esteemed panelists, maybe some reflections as we move towards closing our panel today. And perhaps to help you start, there are two pressing questions that I think would be helpful to hear from you for the audience here in Kazakhstan. Paul has mentioned that it's very important to invest in people and in teacher training. And one of the issues might be that I would see if the technology is there, the solutions that EON, Reality, and Vantage Labs presented today are in teachers' hands. They sometimes feel reluctant to actually use them. So what are some of the recommendations and ways you would have for teachers and educators on the ground or learning designers to implement those emerging technologies and embrace them like you did across your career? And And the second question, there are many ideas and startups around the world innovating or attempting to innovate in edtech. In fact, there is a gallery at this current EdTech Forum with impressive and latest solutions from local startups in Kazakhstan, but not many of them reach the learners for a number of reasons. I know you work with and regularly feature some innovative EdTech solutions on your podcast, Silver Lining for Learning. My second question is, what are some of the frameworks that stakeholders in Kazakhstan can use to scale education technology solutions that you could guide us through? Thank you so much, Professor Didi. The floor is yours. The virtual floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to share ideas. And I particularly want to thank Aliya, who was a wonderful student in my classes at Harvard last year and who shared many insights about education in this region of the world. So where is all of this going? The vision of learning has always been guided learning by doing. We know that that's more powerful than teaching by telling. And we're finally getting to the point worldwide where we can move to performance simulators that allow people to wear the shoes of the person that they'd like to be and get coaching and feedback on how they're doing in terms of mastering that knowledge and skills. For example, all across the world, but certainly in the US, the pandemic has made teacher education difficult because pre-service teachers typically would have face-to-face student teaching as a way of validating what they've learned, but a lot of the schools were closed. So performance simulators, and my colleagues and I work in this area, allow teachers to interact with virtual children who are played by a simulation specialist. If you think about the Wizard of Oz, the wizard is big and on the screen. There's a little man behind the curtain that controls the wizard. Using AI, we now can control up to 7 digital puppets with a single trained simulation specialist, and teachers can interact with these simulated students. It's like a flight simulator for becoming a teacher. You make your mistakes with virtual people rather than with actual students. But that does pose a challenge as well, because teachers have been taught to teach by telling and have students learn by listening. And in fact, the modeling that they've gotten from all the teachers they've had has been largely teaching by telling and learning by listening. And so there's a tremendous amount of capacity building that we need to do to help teachers understand what it's like to have their students be in very rich virtual environments like the ecosystems that my colleagues and I build, where they wear the shoes of an ecosystem scientist, they wander around a virtual ecosystem, they find something that seems to be wrong, and they learn inquiry science and other kinds of skills in the course of trying to fix this. And combining AI and VR is a powerful way of providing that kind of rich experience, and then on the back end, collecting the kind of data that lets you provide rich feedback. And other speakers on the panel have talked about different pieces of this vision. But beyond developing the capacity on the part of teachers to be effective coaches and mentors, given these kinds of tools, there is also the issue of scale. And the 3 quick precepts that I would give about scale is, first, scale is not about adopting something, it's about adapting something. Something that works really well at Harvard doesn't necessarily work well in another college in the United States, and it's very unlikely to work well in a place like Kazakhstan. So we always have to accommodate to local goals, local cultures, local settings, and so on. And scale involves understanding how to take something that works elsewhere and adapt it to your situation. A second precept for scale is to make the beginnings of scale easy. You want to be able to do something quickly and feel that it's working for you, so that then you're motivated to keep going and learn something more complicated because it's going to deliver even more value. And designing something for scale where you get some easy wins early on in the process is very important to motivating people to keep going. And then the third thing I'll say, and I know we're running out of time, is that ownership is a very important part of scale. We design these virtual ecosystems. We put them out into practice and teachers use them with students and they adapt them and they find ways to make them easier to use for them. And then they come back to us and they say, here's what we've done and it's so much better than what you started with. And of course it is better for them than what we started with. So they've taken ownership of it and now they're much more likely to keep doing it because it's not something that some guy at Harvard came up with. It's something that they came up with and understood how to do. I'll just close by saying, Aliya mentioned the Silver Lining for Learning series. I hope you'll take a look. We just finished episode 111. We look at very interesting kinds of innovations all across the world. We started this when the pandemic shut everything down in March 2020. And we said to ourselves, well, we'll do this for 5 or 10 weeks and then the pandemic will be over. Of course, we weren't a very good forecaster of that. But the fact that we are at 111 and going strong indicates the silver lining of the pandemic, which is that it's a terrible human tragedy, but it's the best opportunity for educational transformation that I've seen in my lifetime. And so we don't want to waste a good crisis. And panels like this, initiatives like Aliya and her colleagues are leading, the kinds of sustainable infrastructures that the companies here are building, the kinds of wise policy that the US government is developing. These are all key pieces of the puzzle to give us a bright future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Dede. It's such an honor for me personally that you're joining our panel today and appreciate your closing remarks as well as some of the advice that I hope were helpful. And I want to thank all of our panelists for an excellent session today and providing such a broad spectrum of the latest trends and best practices in the US education technology sector from the policy, business, as well as academic perspectives. I'm confident that the audience in Kazakhstan has gained many valuable insights from you, and I appreciate you joining this session at such a late hour. It's now almost midnight on the eastern coast of the United States. I really appreciate you being here today. And also, on behalf of the commercial section of the US diplomatic mission in Kazakhstan, I would like to thank the organizers, Elmira, Obry, Mireille Lucera at the Bureau for Continuing Professional Development at AIFC, as well as Yurnuris Magomedov, the chairman of the management board of AIFC Authority, for an invitation to cover this topic and organizing this panel discussion. Wishing the organizers a successful Education Tech Forum ahead, and thank you to our audience as well as our panelists. Once again, goodbye.